Welcome back to Health Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mazagir Gandhi, and I'm a senior at Roosevelt High School.
I'm Angelina Dang, and I'm a senior at Roosevelt High School.
And I'm Hayat Yermer, and I'm also a senior at Roosevelt High School.
I'm joined with members of Primary Healthcare Student Advisory Council, and our goal is to ensure that PHC provides the best care possible for youth. We're here to promote PHC school-based health clinics and help our peers learn about the services available to them.
Our council, made up of students from DMPS high schools, is collaborating with the Polk County Health Department By the Numbers podcast to create a few takeover videos.
You can check out our previous episodes where we cover different types of mental health stigma, including structural, public, and cultural. We also talked about how social media, drug use, and cultural beliefs impact mental health stigma. Stigma and other barriers play a role in preventing youth from seeking mental health services. Today, we have Dr. Fossenberg, a licensed psychologist and behavioral health consultant at Primary Health Care's East Side Clinic, back to continue our conversations about stigma.
Thank you for joining us again, Dr. Fossenberg. We appreciate your willingness to share your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm looking forward to talking with you three today.
As so we are. And to start with the questions, as a psychologist, in what ways do you notice stigma at your job?
I think at my job, I notice it in a few different ways. And just since the three of us didn't talk last time, at my job, I work with all kinds of people, from pregnant people to people who are more like elderly folks. I work with people across the lifespan. So, but one of my passions is working with teens and young adults. And I think one of the ways that I think a lot of people assume stigma only shows up in certain age groups. And there's a lot of focus on stigma in teen mental health. But actually, I see stigma in almost every stage of life with the folks that I work with. I also see that show up with coworkers. I see that show up in the larger organization. Stigma is something that's kind of everywhere, which is a really broad answer to that question. But I imagine if the three of you kind of think about how you see stigma, you can notice it in some ways other than just your peers. Would that seem right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Where else
definitely.
do you notice it? Or how else do you notice it?
I think a big one is at home and maybe just in the community. There's a lot of stigma about seeking help, or even just the term mental health, which is really difficult because in my language, there's not a term for mental health. And it's really just about how someone's acting or feeling. And if someone's acting or feeling a certain way, it's religious-wise, it's oh, something possessed you, or culturally, it's well, maybe you should have tried harder, or stuff like that.
Definitely. Yeah. So even showing up, I love that example of stigma showing up in language, that it's just on a basic level, not recognized or seen in the same ways that we see it, or some people see it.
Yeah, and to add on to what Angelina said, I also think that even when, I think it's really hard for certain people or communities to even acknowledge someone has mental health struggles, and even if they do, it's really looked down upon, and it's looked as shameful, and so that really prevents people getting help, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that word shame is such a big one, and one we talk about a lot in mental health, because shame, there's this, are you all familiar with Brené Brown? Have you ever heard of her before?
Mm-mm.
No. So she's a writer and a researcher out of Texas, and she talks a lot about how shame gets in the way. One of my favorite things she says is that shame grows in the dark. So shame grows and develops and festers when we don't talk about it. But shame can't survive in the light. So as soon as you bring it to light, it helps to decrease some of that stigma. It helps to decrease the shame. As we talk about it, as we feel more connected, shame can't survive in that lit space as opposed to somewhere dark. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I also think I completely lost my train of thought. Don't know where I was going there.
That's okay.
Shame. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It plays a really big role. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. And if you ever think of what you were about to say, we could always just go back to it.
I'll let you know if it comes back for sure.
Our next question is, how do you approach working with clients who have internalized stigma about their mental health challenges?
Excellent question. And for internalized stigma is a tricky one because something we talked a little bit about in the last episode was we talked about how shame is kind of that, or stigma is kind of that like shameful voice in your mind that whispers things like, I'm crazy, this is silly, I'm just being too sensitive. And a lot of times when people have those thoughts, they don't realize that it's internalized stigma. So for me in my work, what I think is really important is just getting curious. Like I ask people, what are the kind of thoughts that you have when you think about mental health? And I see people during their primary care visits. So when they come in to see their doctor, I pop in and say, hey, how's it going? I'm Dr. Fossenberg. I'm here to talk with people today just about their mental health, their emotional health, and how those relate to their physical health. And that's a really great way for me to kind of break down some of that stigma of it's not a weird thing to talk to a therapist, to talk to someone who's trained in mental health during a medical appointment. It's just kind of part of it. Just like you probably don't think about stepping on the scale when you go to the doctor, right? Is that a weird thing or is that pretty typical?
Like regular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just don't think twice about it. Or like getting your blood pressure checked. And so for me to step into some of these medical appointments is one of the ways that I can help people with that internalized stigma of being like, this is a normal thing we do when we come into a visit. But I also then get the chance to ask them things like, okay, I hear you're struggling with like getting out of bed and you're feeling really low and really sad all the time. What are the things that your brain starts to tell you when you're feeling low or sad? Or if we think about some cultural components, I talk with a lot of folks from different cultural backgrounds than mine that there are a lot of physical health things that they start to talk about, like my stomach hurts all the time, or I have no more energy. And so I get to say, what does your brain tell you when you experience those things? And so often I hear those things that we talked about in the last episode. I'm lazy, I'm not good enough, I'm just not trying hard enough. All these different messages. And that is a way that we can start to identify and get curious about, well, where do you think that came from? What do you think that's about? And I think if there's one thing that I hope we can take from this about breaking down stigma is that it's curiosity, asking people about their experiences and getting curious about, instead of judging, oh, I had this thought of I'm too lazy or this is so silly. Get curious about it. Like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder where that came from. And then we can start to get at some of these other aspects of stigma, whether that's explicit conversation or people just thinking about it in their own minds.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do you ever do those like follow-ups or like go in and ask about their mental health for teens or young adults?
Absolutely.
And are there parents in the room? Yeah. Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you get any like drawbacks or like setbacks from the parents when you go in and ask about mental health? Or I just wonder what the dynamic is like with the parents in the room.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good question. And to back up a little bit, it kind of depends. So for teens that I work with, it's really important to me when I'm working with teens and young adults that they recognize and feel that they have some power and autonomy. I mean, you all are at a stage of life where you're learning more about who you are as people, and you get to have a little bit more autonomy and decision-making around yourself and your healthcare choices. And mental health within primary healthcare is part of healthcare. And so there gets to be choice for the teen when I'm working with them about, and I think for the majority of our behavioral health providers, if not all of them, that you get to choose. Do you want your parents to be in here as we talk about things related to your mental health? Or would you rather that conversation happen alone? And I try to make that a pretty explicit conversation at the start. And if the teen is comfortable meeting with me alone, then we'll have that conversation. And it's also really important to me that I highlight that the things that I talk about with you, I don't have to, and I'll say this with the parent in the room, I don't have to share every single detail of the things that we talk about, but your safety is very important to me. And if I have concerns about your physical safety, I'm going to involve your parents in that or your guardians. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that kind of sets the stage for helping people feel more comfortable, and teens and young adults feel more comfortable talking about their mental health, talking about things they're struggling with that they may not feel quite as comfortable talking to their parents about yet. Kind of opens the door for some additional vulnerability. And sometimes the teens or the parents aren't comfortable with that, and that's okay too. My job isn't to create more tension or to make things more uncomfortable. I want people to feel safe and okay opening up. And if they're not there yet, that's okay too. Does that make sense with the dynamic? Yeah.
Thank you.
I wonder if you had some questions or concerns about how dynamics might look with a parent in the room. Like, what were your thoughts in asking that question? In a very psychologist comment.
I think I was just thinking about like what I would do in that moment as a patient.
Yeah.
I think if you were to come in and ask me that with my mom there, I'm not really sure if I would feel comfortable saying stuff, or like, because I translate everything for my mom, so I don't even know how I would like translate to my mom that you were asking me that. So I was just wondering what the dynamic was like for other patients.
Definitely. One of the things I also I'm glad you bring up interpretation and translation. So we do have all of our providers at primary healthcare, whether they're medical or behavioral health, all of us have access to interpretation services. And it's really important for me, because of cultural factors, to not put someone in that position to have to translate for a parent and be uncomfortable with, like, how do I even describe this? So we have access to interpretation services, which it's really important for us to use those so that you don't have to be in that spot of having to figure out how do I explain this, especially if mental health isn't a thing. Like, isn't like the words don't exist within the language. And we can leave that to interpretation services rather than putting that pressure on you. So hopefully, I wonder, that I think is a useful tool that applies for any of the languages that folks come in speaking.
Yeah.
Thank you for that response. It was super insightful. Our next question is, what can parents, teachers, and friends do to create a more supportive environment for youth struggling with mental health?
I think that it's a big question. It's a big question, and I think that I was talking with another psychologist recently in the community about how my initial thought to this question is like, well, we just need to talk about it more. Like, we need to make it more out in the open. But really interestingly and seemingly like in a contradictory way, as conversations about mental health stigma have happened more frequently and more regularly, the research has actually shown that it has had the opposite effect of what we thought. And I see a little bit of shock on all your faces. Yeah, that's surprising, right? And the reason for that comes back to, or one of the like hypotheses around that is that about why that dynamic is happening is that as we talk about it more, there kind of becomes this like comparative culture of like, well, my depression looked like this. And when I was depressed, I struggled. It becomes comparative and kind of like a trying to one up each other. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that it became less like we're going to unite and like come together and more, well, is it really that bad? Like, did you really experience that? Or could it have really been that bad? So I think it's important to think about how we talk about it and making sure that, like, as parents, teachers, and friends try to create more supportive environments, it's not well, what you're experiencing isn't quite that bad, or I had it so much worse. It becomes more of like, it's more important to practice that curiosity I talked about a minute ago. Like, tell me about your experience, and mine may not be the same, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be. But I want to know what it's like for you. Asking questions like, how does it feel when you're low? What kind of support do you need when you're feeling down? How can I show up for you better? Are some really great questions to start with. But I wonder for you all if there are things you have that help you feel more supported, like in your own mental health, in your own journeys. How people have shown up well for you.
I think that youth struggling with mental health often feel alone in their struggles. So I feel like if people that they looked up to, like adults or teachers, were more open about their own struggles with mental health and also about the way that they overcame that and recommending resources for that individual to like get help, I think that that individual would take it much better and be more inclined to actually act on it.
I love the point that you're bringing up because what I kind of hear is I think parents and teachers and adults in positions of power can sometimes, like whether we mean to or not, we can kind of put them on a pedestal and be like, well, okay, but you're telling me to like take care of my mental health, but what does that really mean? Is that something you've ever experienced? And I hear for you, it's really important to feel like to have them be humanized. Like I've struggled with things too, and this is how I've tried to navigate them. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So having a little bit of that human aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What about the two of you?
I personally think being vulnerable is super hard for me in general, but I think it's extremely hard for the people that I constantly surround myself and like that I'm closest to. So like the people that I guess would like typically be like who I should talk to help improve my mental health, I kind of don't want to because I don't want to be vulnerable with the people who know me most, because I think sometimes after that moment of vulnerability, when I kind of look back at it and I think about it, I'm like, dang, that was kind of embarrassing, like being like, which is not a healthy mindset like at all, but that's just like what I feel after like that moment of vulnerability, and I think sometimes just checking up on me like after that and like just making sure that I'm okay, I think that probably would help most. And just acting like regular and normal, like it doesn't need to be like some big deal, like it can be like, oh, like, are you good, like, you know what I mean, like it doesn't really need to be like a huge like dramatic tears, this, that, and the third, like it doesn't need to always be that way. So yeah,
Doesn't always need to be a huge deal.
yeah,
Can be kind of just a much more chill approach.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was chuckling a little bit as you were talking about like a little bit of regret is what it sounded like after you share something. I bought a new laptop a couple years ago, and I spent a decent amount of money on this laptop. And I did not open that thing for 2 weeks. It sat unopened in the box for 2 weeks because I had terrible buyer's remorse. I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have bought this. I could probably take it back. I didn't take it out of the box. I can take it back, right? And then I eventually opened it and used it, and I love this laptop, and I use it all the time. But that initial remorse of like, this isn't something that I would usually spend money on, or this isn't something that I would usually do. It's uncomfortable when we do something like that for the first time. And it can be really normal when we're experiencing something really hard and we're vulnerable with someone for the first time, as we kind of like take that little like shame nugget out and of the dark and bring it into the light. That's super uncomfy. Like it doesn't always feel good. And I see all three of you nodding your heads a little bit that it feels like something you might identify with. But once we, take the laptop out of the box and we unwrap it and we use it, we're like, oh yeah, okay, maybe that wasn't the worst thing in the world, and this actually is something that is going to serve me moving forward. We get more comfortable with it the more we do it.
Yeah, I really like that metaphor of the initial regret of buying the laptop, but then it eventually was something that you didn't regret at all. And I understand what Hayat is saying, because I feel like definitely in like today's world, especially in schools within like your own friendships, it's hard to be that person to like break that normality of like lighthearted conversation and just unserious topics, because it's become like rare for people to be like serious in their friendships. So being that like first person to like do that and get serious, it can often be like, what's the word? Like received kind of awkwardly, or like just something that you end up like looking back and be like, that was so bad.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair too. It's, because I hear that there needs to be a recognition that other people may not be ready to like receive the thing that we're putting out there yet, or they're new to this too, and they may not know. Like, I don't know, if I was opening my brand new laptop with someone who had never used a Mac before, and they're trying to help me set up my MacBook, that's not going to be super effective, and we're going to have to just muddle through it together. So it's hard to be that first person who gets unserious in a relationship. But I also want to highlight that, like, one, not only do we have to give, sometimes we have to give other people some grace if they're not used to doing this either or having conversations like this. But we also don't, when we talk about being vulnerable, we also don't have to do that with every single one of our friends. In fact, it would be a pretty bad deal if you just started walking around to all the people you know and sharing your deepest, darkest secrets, fears, and worries. I would actually kind of advise against that. Let's not do that. But it does take a little bit of bravery to be like, okay, in this relationship with this one person that I feel a little bit closer to, who maybe can have, I get the sense that this person might be able to have this kind of conversation. We can use some discretion in like, okay, I think this person may be safer to share things with versus some of these other friends who maybe that's just the kind of friendship we have. We just don't take things it's pretty unserious. We don't take things that seriously. That's okay. All these different kinds of friendships serve a purpose. But one, we don't need to share things just willy-nilly. We get to have some discretion in doing that. And doing it, sometimes that's more comfortable to do privately, like pulling someone aside instead of in a group of people and saying, hey, this is something that I've been struggling with and I'm feeling really nervous to talk to you about this. How does something like that feel? More approachable? Not so much?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think I meant to say like that's why that first step is needed in like a friendship to like kind of take that friendship further. Like it's something that you regret, but in the long run it'll pay off and like normalize that within the friendship.
Love that, even though it's a little scary.
Yeah,
for sure.
And our next question is, what resources are available to youth seeking mental health services? These resources could include websites, phone numbers, or healthcare organizations.
Love this. Okay, so many, first and foremost, so many resources are available, starting with school. Most schools have school counselors. A lot of schools, especially within DMPS, have opportunities for people to see if you're wanting to see a therapist. There are some like connections to therapists within schools. So starting at school, talking with like a trusted adult, if that's a parent or a guardian or just like a trusted adult within your community or within your school, excellent place to start. Sometimes when we're starting these conversations, though, the first person we talk to, and sometimes even the first few people we talk to, are not going to have the answers right away. Like, this may be the first time they're talking to somebody about things like this, too. It's okay to keep seeking that. Like, please do keep seeking that. Keep asking questions and talking about what you need. So, school, parents, guardians. In terms of, there's actually this app that I really love. Have y'all ever heard of Finch? Finch? Mm-mm. Okay, I am not sponsored by Finch. I received no monetary kickback from this, but it's an app, like it's a self-care app, where you get this little bird, a little finch, that you get points for every time you do self-care activities. So things like journaling, I'm using air quotes for that because it's just, a little thing on your phone. You can write 2 sentences and that counts as your journal. Journaling about how you feel, drinking a glass of water because that is basic self-care. talking with a friend about how you feel, labeling your emotions. You earn points to help care for your little Finch along the way as you do these different self-care activities. There are also some connections if you're finding that you're struggling more. That app has things that, like different resources to connect you to on a more national level. So that's one of my favorite ones. It kind of gamifies self-care and mental health care. Other websites that are important for mental health services, certainly primary healthcare has many resources available to teens and young adults, as you all, I'm sure, are well aware of as you advocate for these. And all of our behavioral health therapists and behavioral health consultants see people across the lifespan, just like I do. So you can chat with your primary care doctor or provider at primary health care, and they can get you connected to a behavioral health therapist or a behavioral health consultant. Let's see. In terms of, it's hard. I'm chuckling a little bit because it's hard to consolidate verbally a bunch of different resources that exist in my head. There is Your Life Iowa has several different resources available. And those are the ones that are coming to me right off the top. But if you all are interested and we have a place we can post this, I can certainly get you a more comprehensive list. But Your Life Iowa. My brain is going blank. As I'm trying to envision my list. We also have school is just really honestly one of the best places to start. I think that because then if we talk to a trusted adult, they can also help you navigate barriers along the way. For folks who have health insurance, there's actually a phone number listed on the back of your insurance card, and you can call and ask for different therapists or behavioral health services that are available through your insurance company. But I also recognize that that's not something that is available to everyone. But for those people who are insured, that is an option. But honestly, the best way to access mental health services and access those kind of resources is to just do something. Start somewhere. Talking with a teacher, talking with a parent, talking with friends is a great place to start and get you connected. And certainly talk to your doctor.
Thank you. We'll be following up with you about the list because I think that would be a really good thing for us to put on our website.
For sure.
Also something that we could probably make into like a little pamphlet
Or brochure.
Brochure
Yeah.
that we could hand around schools. So keep a lookout in your email inbox because we'll definitely be reaching out to you.
Great. And I'm sure you can make that look a lot prettier than I would be able to make it.
So I know you already touched a little bit about this, but what resources are available to help overcome barriers such as insurance, as we talked about, language barrier, and cultural stigma?
Yeah. So I'll start with the insurance because that feels kind of most accessible and right at this moment. For folks with insurance is a big, crazy complicated thing. But for people who do not have insurance or who don't have sufficient insurance, certainly primary healthcare has options for what's called a sliding scale. And that's not unique to primary healthcare. That actually exists in other organizations outside of here too. And so asking a mental health provider or even physical health providers about whether they offer a sliding scale if you don't have insurance or don't have sufficient insurance. Do y'all know what a sliding scale is?
Is it like price or like they do it based off like your income or something? Or
It's perfect, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, income, family size are usually the metrics for that. They'll base it off of income and family size, so that because a lot of organizations and providers in the community are really passionate about making mental health more accessible for people, and this is one of the ways we do that. We don't want that to become as much of a burden. So basing it off of income, family size. And there are multiple organizations in the community that offer that. And then for folks with insurance, like I said, calling the number on the back of your insurance card is a good place to start. For seeking mental health services, there's also a website called Psychology Today that many therapists in the community, whether they're in private practice or they're in like community health centers, they list all of the different kinds of therapy they do, the patient populations that they serve, and they also will list what insurances they take and whether they're accepting new patients or clients. Patients, clients are pretty interchangeable in the kind of world that I operate in. So if you see that language in either place, they basically mean the same thing. So that's an additional resource for accessing. Tell me more. Well, for language barriers, I think we talked a bit about that too. We'll kind of get into some not so exciting stuff, but some logistics that are important for any organization that accepts Medicaid as an insurance company from their patients. They're legally required to have interpretation services. So for folks with Medicaid, you should be able to access, and most places that accept a wide range of insurance providers, that are that patients bring in, they will have many will have interpretation services. Things that are less common I recognize that the language services are also can, even with interpretation services, can still be a barrier. And I wish I had a better answer for how to navigate that when that becomes tricky. I don't. I wish I did. I think it's a failing that we have. I'm specifically thinking about some of the languages we use, such as some of the languages our patients speak, like Haitian Creole or Karen. It's very hard sometimes to have to get interpreters on the line or have them available during times that we need them, and that's some systemic stigma and some systemic problems, not within here or even statewide, but is a much larger issue when it comes to access. And unfortunate, but please keep seeking services. We're doing our best. And I know for so many of the patients that come in and speak that some of those languages that we have a harder time getting interpretation services for, we'll apologize up and down. Like we're trying, and we'll be persistent in getting that. It just may take some time. And I've always appreciated their patience too, even though I can imagine that it's very frustrating to have to wait.
Yeah. Thank you for all of those resources you just mentioned, and to any viewers or listeners watching. I think it would be very beneficial to take advantage of any of those. And before wrapping up, we would like to encourage any DMPS high school students to apply to Primary Healthcare Student Advisory Council. You should apply if you're interested in engaging in your community,
improving accessibility to DMPS school-based clinics,
gaining leadership skills,
building community connections,
and exploring the world of medicine and healthcare. Our main focus at the Advisory Council is voicing our ideas, creating year-long passion projects, and speaking with professionals on how we can break down barriers surrounding medical and mental health services. To apply, check out our website at phciowa.org/school-advisory-council.
Currently, DMPS has 3 school-based clinics located at Hoover High School/Meredith Middle School Complex, East High School, and Kurtz Opportunity Center. These school-based clinics provide medical and mental health services to all, regardless of insurance status, language spoken, and immigration status.
And again, special thanks to Addie and the Polk County Health Department for letting us take over your platform for this episode. And thank you to Dr. Fossenberg for returning to our podcast for the second time. And with that, thanks for tuning in.